All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, returning for the fourth time, we have Kevin Eastman, which is mind-boggling to even say. If you don't know, Kevin Eastman is co-creator of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and in my humble opinion, one of the keystone and one of the most inspirational DIY figures in the arts. Kevin started the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with his friend Peter Laird, and they based it on Frank Miller and Jack Kirby comics they were influenced by, and just on the fact that they wanted to make comics. This wasn't a plan to do anything successful other than express themselves in a way they were inspired by. It took off like wildfire. That's the DIY ethos in the most pure fashion. Doing something you love with the friends you love and inspired by the work that motivates you. So with that much passion behind it, something good's going to come from it. So anyway, Kevin Eastman's on the show, and he's one of my favorite people, one of my favorite artists, and one of my... I grew up on the Ninja Turtles. If you guys didn't catch, last week we talked to Townsend Coleman, the voice of Michelangelo, as well as many, many other voices you will recognize from cartoons and advertisements. And that was a deep dive into the world of voiceovers. And if you're in the Ninja Turtles, I recommend checking out that episode as well. This was recorded probably, I don't even remember. This was recorded in the summer, right after Kevin released the comic with Marvel, the Elektra White, Black, and Blood issue. So since then, there's been a lot going on. The Last Ronin's got a new series called The Lost Years that's coming out. It should be relatively soon. Also, I want to put out spoilers for The Last Ronin. So if you have yet to read it, make sure you do that. There's a really cool hardback out now with the whole series. The IDW series is taking off with the Armageddon game. I believe the third issue is out. And last thing I want to plug that Kevin has going on at this moment is the KevinEastmanStudios.com sale. Right now for the holidays, there's a 20% off holiday sale. Use the code word Cowabunga off any order. And if you're not familiar with Kevin Eastman Studios, they have these really cool turtle auctions where he finds like old memorabilia that he's held on to and signs it, or you can get original art pieces, original pages. It's a really cool chance to get a behind-the-scenes view of the art process and help the artist himself, continuing the DIY tradition and owning some sick art pieces. Anyhow, be on the lookout. Kevin's always got a lot coming out. Lastly, a personal update. If you're new to this podcast, I play in a band called Sea Level, letter C-Level. We are a funk punk reggae rock group out of Cleveland, Ohio. We take acoustic 12-string guitars and run them through Marshall amps. So if any of that sounds appealing, check us out on all the streaming platforms or C-Level44.com. We just put out a single called DIYs and Open Mics with our good friends Leah Mara and the Dreamcatchers. And I'm really proud of how it came out. And it's the whole DIY ethos that Kevin's a beacon light for. So it's very special to be able to kind of put that right here, or just talk about right here before this interview. One other thing that if you're a fan of The Last Ronin, you might find interesting is Townsend's opinion on Michelangelo being the last Ronin. So we talk about that in the episode before this one. Yeah, and if you guys can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Kevin and sharing their insights with you. So without further ado, here we go, Kevin Eastman, Part 4.
Hey, it's Kevin.
Hey, Kevin, how's it going?
Hey.
Hey.
It's going good, thanks. How are you doing, man?
Doing good.
Been nice to talk to you again.
Likewise.
Yes, thanks.
Cool.
Yeah, no, I was sorry, 2 minutes late. It was I had a little trouble dialing in for some reason. It wasn't taking the code. But anyway, yeah, nice to be here, and hope all is well with you.
All's going. I had the same troubles too. But yeah, no, it's getting to be the end of the year. Kids are losing their mind.
Oh my God, yeah. Yep.
I'm sure you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's we're the same. We've got one that's doing driving lessons, and yeah, exactly. It's heading towards the end of the year, and they're they're done. So it's really it's a push to keep everybody focused, as you well know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's weird that as soon as it's like almost over, it's over.
Yeah.
But anywho, I wanted to pick up where we left off. So for 15 minutes, you were a bass player?
Yes. For 15 minutes, I was a bass player. And no, it's funny. I was when I was up at my dad's recently, even he still lives up in Maine, and big storage area. And over the years, stuff has sort of ended up in his collection. He's a big vinyl collector, and so all my original albums were there. And it was just funny that he said you should go through those. He said if there's anything you want to keep or save for Shane or this and that, because I've got, not that he was throwing him out or anything. He just said it's been a while since you saw him. So we're just going through all those old albums. It's like all the stuff that you'd go through and find like easy songs like anything by AC/DC and stuff like that you could learn all the riffs to, or all the bass parts, or all the stuff that in our repertoire that we tried to do. So, but yeah, that was as we mentioned before, it was great to do. I really loved it, but it was trying to be good at either drawing or bass player. You couldn't do both, so I just had to choose one to focus on, and that was where the bass got put down, and I stuck with the drawing. So.
Was it? Well, it's what. How old were you when you're picking at the bass?
This through high school. Yeah,
through high school.
It's because it was sort of it was something that music was we had friends that were musicians, and my mom's longtime boyfriend at the time, he was in a country rock band, and so growing up before high school, it's like he was always playing weekends, and there was a lot of times I'd have the band would practice at the house and stuff like that. We had a big old farmhouse that we lived in, and I had exposure to it and enjoyed the process as being a fan of music, and so but earnestly got into it and applied myself to it in freshman, sophomore year of high school. So by junior, I think we had a group of guys. We quote unquote had a band, but which meant that we practiced as much as we could get away with between school and work and all that stuff to try to make a go of it. But it was just it was challenging.
It's weird. Well, growing up around it looks it's welcoming and seems easy, which is really cool. And like it's one of those things like you at that age, yep. You got to kind of like, am I gonna focus in on this, and that's a hard decision to make even now, what to choose to focus on. So what were you guys
yep.
picking up AC/DC stuff, or were you hitting like the country stuff?
It was all of the above. It was sort of, for certainly going into, it's like we were all learning. So it was just, and it was like we had a the guy that would do lead guitar, rhythm and lead guitar. His name is Carl Reynolds. He was a couple of years older than us, and so he was the most serious and the most accomplished musician. So he would sort of, so when we would play, he would sort of like I would follow him sort of to try to stay in tune or stay in rhythm and stuff. And then we had a drummer named Bill Dantno who was quite good. He was very serious. He was big into like Pink Floyd and more. We call it acid. I call it acid rock only for lack of a better term right now. But he was sort of interested in that. But Carl was sort of more pop, country rock kind of bass stuff, and that's stuff that was also easier to play. So it kind of reminded me of like when you watch the Beatles anthology or documentary. It's like they would take a bus across town just to meet a guy that knew how to play a G flat or G play a different chord. And so we were all learning, and so it was simplicity was key, and stuff that we could sort of try to learn how to keep a beat and stay generally in tune and have a good time doing it.
That's awesome. But that's such a key thing to learn from. It's hard for a group of people to do it on the spot, work as a unit. But like those lessons of taking something simple and building off that, is that something you found yourself applying when you like focused more in on art?
Definitely for the kind of art that I wanted to do, which was comic books, because it really is, and that's something we were aware of from the earliest days when you read comics, and that it was a team effort. Certainly for a lot of the bigger companies, which is mainly Marvel or DC or Charlton Comics or those kind of things, is that you'd have a writer, an editor, a penciler, an inker, a colorist. So you'd have a whole team to produce a 24-page plus comic. And the reality is you actually needed that to do monthly comics because it's so much work to do them. And so that was sort of the team aspect was something that was very aware of. So when Peter and I met and started working together on stuff, it was great because we both wrote and we both drew. And so it was just having an extra, hand to do all the chores, because, our stories were 40 pages. They were big stories and they were detailed, and it took a lot of, I did they were black and white, so we didn't have colors, but I did the original, I was the original letterer. And so we were the writers, the pencilers, the inkers, the letterers, the publishers, the secretary, we did all aspects of it. So it was really, we were the team aspect, and it was great as the company grew and we were able to bring in, a letterer, and then eventually when they went to color, the colors. And so, but it was great to have a bit more of a team to help, because it's the end of the day, it's butts in a seat and long periods at the drawing board, and having more hands to get the job done made it more enjoyable and less tedious.
But I think it's important to know all those spots, and then when you bring that person in, you know exactly how to inform them how to add to it. Like, that's cool that you guys got to learn all those positions to better inform it. I read that Richard Corbin informed your early comic writing before TMNT. Can you elaborate on how his style influenced your writing?
Definitely, it was, if I would say, Jack Kirby being the first big influence, around the same time that I had discovered, another huge influence, which was in mainstream comics, which is Frank Miller, for storytelling style and pacing and that stuff as a mainstream comic. I then discovered self-published comics. Underground comics, they were called at the time, which was guys like Richard Corbin that were doing, their own stories, which was, stuff that had more adult themes, language and nudity, but still strongly based in, adventure, past, present, and future. A lot of sci-fi, a lot of, Outer Limits or Night Gallery or Twilight Zone or those kinds of things. And what I liked about Corbin is Corbin would do kind of like what Jack Kirby would do, with a lot of different kinds of characters, and Corbin would often do short stories. So his stories would be part of anthologies like Slow Death or Twisted Tales and things like that. So he'd have an 8-pager or a 10-pager, or, these shorter ones. And I really dug that, certainly in my earliest years, because, again, being a single artist, taking on a huge comic project was just very daunting. But you could come up with a idea that you could do in 4 pages and start it and complete it in a period of time before it just became, I'll never finish it kind of stuff. So I wrote a lot. All my early stuff was inspired by Corbin stories. So it was short stories, complete stories with different characters and different themes and different ideas in each one to sort of, you get a splinter of an idea, you can feed it, explore it, and do it, and then move on, which was great.
That's super cool. Is that like did that inspire kind of Elektra one shot you just did with Marvel, where it's kind of like that cool poem moving through?
That was in part for sure. I think what's been great about those Black, White, and Blood series that they've done so many of now at this point, which was the Wolverine ones and Deadpool and Harley Quinn and stuff. I love. I think sometimes that even as a fan of some of those characters, to become invested in an ongoing series of 6, 8, or 10 issues or even longer can seem also daunting. So with an anthology, it's a great way to jump in and explore character ideas in small bites and just sort of get in and get out. And same for so many working artists that don't want to commit to a 6-issue series, but they'd love to do an 8-page or 10-page story like Elektra. It's really appealing to them because they can agree to it, do it in between other stuff. So for Freddie and I, having Marvel invited us to it, and that was the basis. So we said, well, what kind of story would be great? And Freddie and I sort of bantered back and forth what kind of story I liked. And I had just recently read an article where it talked about JFK's one of his favorite poems was a World War I poem by Alan, I forget his last name, it's Sebring, which was called A Reservoir of Death. So it was a poem written during World War I. And I loved the poem, and I just sort of mentioned to Freddie, I said, this really suits this kind of story as a framework, and we can build a story of the 3 different Electras, the white one, the resurrected one, the black Electra, then the ultimate, which is the original red one, into this inner battle where they're fighting each other throughout the story. Ultimately they all know they have a reservoir of death. And so that was sort of the inspiration and the basis, and we just built the story around it. And it was great to be able to do it because Freddie's doing Power Rangers Godzilla crossover series right now. I was finishing Last Ronin, and as well as working on the ongoing series with Tom. So it was just, there's no way we could have done any more than that great little, 10-pager and had a blast doing it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I've noticed some of those kind of poetic moves through like Turtles issues. I'm losing my words today. Turtles issues. And like it's like adding a visual to a poem, like line by line, and that's super cool. And there's no other medium I think that can really do that. One other thing I kind of wanted to bring up along like a poetic expression is with the end of Ronin, which congratulations on the Marvel issue and finishing Ronin. The ending was incredible. And it was emotional, and it was like it's hard to end a series, and like that I think was just perfect. But at the very end, or maybe not the very end, but when they crack open Splinter's book and it says no peace but Keneo, like after flipping through all the issues and seeing the word no peace, that's such a beautiful cap to the story. When did that bit of the story come to you? Was that always in Peter's original script?
No, it was definitely, it evolved out of the creation of the entire story, because it was, we knew that I had the idea that I wanted, after Donatello and Splinter died and Michelangelo had gone to Japan to get them, that he, because I'd referenced Splinter's journal a number of times over the years of different comics, but a little here, a little there, but we had never really brought it to light. And it wasn't part of the original idea that Pete and I had, but we always sort of, I imagined Splinter being kind of a Bruce Lee character, in that he had written this book when he was still younger. He was called the Art of Jeet Kune Do, which is sort of his philosophy on martial arts and training and life and stuff. And so I wanted to do this journal of Splinter's being something similar. And so then Michelangelo would follow that journal as a training mechanism and a path, and it would keep him in touch with his father's teachings to help him grieve and all that. But it's the idea of the no piece, N-O piece to the K-N-O-W piece is Tom's. And I loved it because he said, because we had built around this journal, I said, well, the journal's going to be this, and this is what he's going to pass on to Casey Marie at the end. And he said, well, what would be interesting is Splinter, out of his frustration towards the end, when they always wanted to resolve this thing so that they could have peace, but it would just seem never ending. So he just in his frustration kind of wrote practically in blood, if you will, or the symbolic imagery of blood, no peace, like we'll never have peace, no peace, it's never going to happen. But as Michelangelo's journey as studying that and his father and what he would adopt to it is like, whether it's peace or no peace, you personally need to know peace, what it's like, because that's the driving force to achieve it, is to know it, to reach for it, to strive for it, to reach it. And so that was Tom. He said, I think we should do, when we first show it, have Casey Marie first see it, where it says no peace. And Michelangelo kind of grabs it away from her and says, it means I still have, she wants to know what it means. And he said, it means I still have work to do. And so that sort of stuck with him. And then his final message to her was, look, this is what Splinter can teach you in this journal, but I've added this part, the K and the W to the no. And that's my message to you is, no peace. And that's the key to combining both those worlds into the training, to achieve a sense of peace, with yourself and the world. And, if you know peace, then that, it will happen.
Yeah.
So it was definitely, so that's the best part of like, oh, thank you. No, and again, that's what's so great about working with Tom, and Tom and I, really work well together because one, he's brilliant and I love him. And, but we sort of, share the same brain sometimes, where it's sort of like, this kind of idea, the minute he said it, I go, oh my God, that's fantastic. And that's so spot on. And that's why I like working with him, and why we like working with each other. It is a great relationship.
That was profound. Like I went back through and you keep seeing the no peace. I was like, oh, that's such a good, like everything about the ending was very well resolved. And it's really hard to do with a lot of comics just kind of keep going. And like, that's kind of the nature of the medium, but like to find a good ending it's hard to end a song. It's hard to end a book. And I think you guys knocked it out of the park with this one. And I also really like the Frank Miller influence with the Dark Knight, with the mud fight. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, thank you. No, and that was something that was in my mind from the very beginning, which is there was just such a great moment, defining moment of what Miller was trying to do with that story and defining the character, Batman's character in that story. And so from the beginning, when he enters the city from the outside, he sort of comes through the mud into the city, to what New York has become. And so I just wanted the final battle to be sort of an homage to that Miller-esque sequence where, he's taking this character that's Hiroto, who's really messed up the city, his city, their city, the Turtle City, and he takes them outside back into the mud and said, this is what you deserve. And so it was great to pay respects to the mastery of Frank Miller, and it worked great as a storytelling element for the story.
Yeah, definitely. No, it was full circle all around. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me. I super appreciate it. And I also super appreciate you not hanging up on me again. So
no, it's my pleasure. No, I love, Courtney is great about organizing, the press days and events, so we can sort of keep in touch and reach out and talk to, friends and fans, and, because we, for a while there it was the only way to reach them, and now it's still great. We can reach more people this way, but it's nice to also celebrate that we're back out on the road again for doing conventions and things to get back out there and see the fans in person is exciting. But it's always great to chat with you, and I'm sure we'll do it again, and it's always a pleasure.
Well, looking forward to it, Kevin. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful the rest of the day. And
right,
cowabunga.
Thank you. That's cowabunga, dude.
Cowabunga. Later.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.